Welcome to the Conscious Experience. My name is Boris Kerjner. I'm so excited to be here with you on this channel where we share with you transformational, inspiring perspectives on everyday situations to help you navigate them with grace, with power, with ease. And today I'm here with Mike. Mike, what's today's topic?
Today we are talking about patience versus impatience.
Awesome. Yeah, patience is such a powerful force. It's such a powerful determinant of so many aspects of our life and how successful we are in them or how much we lack success. So I'm really excited about this topic.
Yeah, me too. So let's begin with what do you think patience is, Boris? I have multiple perspectives on this, so I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, excited to hear yours as well. So patience, when I think about patience, patience is really the ability of self-regulation. This is the way that I experience and see it. It's not like an abstract term. It is actually something that we do. It is like a choice. It is an activity of consciousness. So it's not like, I believe in patience. It's more like patience is an inner activity. It is something that you let or you do not express this particular quality, but it is an expression. And I do feel like it's a very volitional expression that does require practice due to basically the way that we have been conditioned. So this would be like, I think my first definition of patience is that it is an inner quality that we express, and it really has its root in our ability to regulate our own nervous system, to regulate ourselves emotionally, physically, psychologically, to essentially be able to practice a form of discipline in the moment.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's like what most people think patience is, which is kind of like a passive, kind of lazy, non-active type of thing, just letting time pass. The way I defined it was consciously and skillfully handling the passing of time. So as time is passing, you're consciously and skillfully handling it. Now, I was like, I don't know if that's the right definition for it. So actually what I'm going to start to do in these episodes is I'm going to look up on etymology.com because I'm curious what the root meaning is. And they had an interesting definition of patience, actually. So they describe patience as the quality of being willing to bear adversities or suffering. So when you think of this, it's actually very interesting because we don't typically use the word patience unless it applies to a certain context in which we need to be patient, right? Otherwise, like, why would we use the word patience? We're just living our day. We're just going through our flow state, right? It's like, no, you have to be patient. So it's interesting because if you look at the word patient, right? Patient is like two English words, right? It's the patient, like you're patient, or it's like the patient at the office or the hospital. And the patient at the hospital is somebody who's suffering or is injured.
Wow.
Right. All right. So cool. It's interesting. And then impatient is the opposite of that. It's like somebody who cannot bear the tolerance of that passing of time when they're suffering. So it's like the inability to handle that emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I want to just play off of what you're saying because I think there's something powerful in this. So you use the word time, and I think equal to time would be change, right? Because time is a measure of change. So it's like it's our ability to bear and be with change that may not necessarily be the kind of change that we're wanting, right? Or it could be the kind of change that we're wanting, but not at the pace that we want, right? So it's basically this dichotomy between our desire, our ideal reality, our ideal experience now, and how long it might take to get there, how much we would have to be in this unfulfilled state, so to speak, before time yields us the experience that we've been asking for.
It's almost like those who are impatient are trying to, like we talked about in our previous episode. Check that out if you haven't already. It's what was that episode called again? Prayer. They're trying to manipulate reality and make it go faster, right? When really we have no idea. Like typically we have an idea. This is just one example of impatience. Like we have an idea, but we don't know how long that idea takes to like gestate or to manifest itself, right? We have no idea. The only thing that we can do is we can focus our like one, our focus and our concentration in order to help speed that up. But other than that, we have no idea. These are things that are external to our control typically. So why do you think patience is so important in like today's society, specifically around like everything being so fast, like with the TikTok, the swipe rights, the dopamine hits?
Yeah, it's amazing, right? I definitely think our nervous system is involved, but to just open up the context of patience more, it is this also this sense that like it is very much not a presence, right? When you are fully present with an experience, there is no need for patience. It's like it doesn't there's no room for it, because this is just it. Like when you're looking in the eyes of your beloved, or let's say you're making love, or you're looking at your child, or like, that sunset is like breathtaking. There is no possibility for patience, even as a concept or any kind of activity, to enter. So patience is always in this gap between our assumed reality inside, like where we want to go, our ideal self, and where we are, which is this like moment. And so we don't see the moment, we're trying to get to something else. And I think, coming back to like, why is it so important right now? We have been, at least I know, like our generation in specific, has been really beautifully and deeply conditioned, starting with like microwave dinners, and all the way up from there, just going like, boop, 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 boop. We're wanting this instant return on our investment even of what? Investment of attention. It's like, well, I've given you attention so much, but sometimes like even in dating, you can kind of like see this play out. It's like, oh yeah, well, if she's not putting out, or if he's not like, asking me for the next step, that's it. I'm out of here. Right. So it's like we've been conditioned to get this hit of like, and it is really a dopamine hit. It's like whenever we have a goal and we hit it, dopamine, right? It is this good feeling. It's just this sense, yeah, nailed it. And right now it's so easy to get our dopamine hits here. We just swipe whatever direction and it's like, boom. Oh yeah, something new. Novelty hits that as well. And so something moving so slowly. I want to just say a little example. Just this weekend, my wife and I were watching an older movie. I don't know if you've ever seen this. It's called Mrs. Doubtfire. Have you seen this?
Probably, I forget though. Yeah.
Robin Williams. Anyway, it's really funny, but very slow. And we were paying attention to how long each scene lasts. And it's like 12 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. The same camera scene, it's following the person, it's following a conversation. Now this is impossible. Like we don't see, now the movies are like every 3 seconds, it changes the scene, changes the angle. Something is like, and that keeps us in this space that we are now accustomed to, that there's always stimulation. I never have to hang out in the gap. I always can fill that gap with something new.
Yeah. That touches on a lot of the answers of like, what are the drawbacks of, or what are why are people impatient, I guess? Why do you think people lose patience, and what do you think is the best way to develop patience?
Well, I think we lose patience primarily due to comparison. Like we have our own experience. That's one. And I think in the past, this used to be a very authoritative experience, because like you had very few things to compare to. Yeah, like this person next to, and it's like typically we're similarly in the stream. Yeah, maybe someone a little bit better off, maybe someone less. But now, like we have people comparing themselves to like this global space, like, oh, this person's got so much more money, he's only 30 years old, or like, oh, he's, she is, got this many followers. And like, we're fueled by this sense of like, oh, when am I going to get there? Like, when am I going to start to earn this? And there's so many of these examples that have this perverse aspect of comparison and competition that lead us to very much take frantic action. You see, I think that the important thing about patience is that patience is a state of calm, of presence, of awareness. It is usually a state of resourcefulness. And so when we take action from a sense of patience, it's like we don't let fear move us. We don't let anxiety move us. But in so many of these other places, we even know we've been in the world of crypto and trading. It's like, and there's so much of this, like, oh, I just want to, like, oh, let's see if I can, and it's this impulsive action that is not coming from intelligence. It's not coming from heart. It's not coming from a state of fullness. It is actually, and always, coming from a state of lack, coming from a state of, oh, it's not enough. There's not enough something. So I have to, so we have this setup. And in order for us to be able to move beyond this, it is now, because that has been trained. Like, just like when we train a dog, like we even have this like Pavlovian conditioning, right? It was just like something, a stimulus was linked with another, basically like outcome, right? So they blow the whistle, the dog gets some food, and then it blows the whistle, there's no more food, dog is still reacting in the same way. It's salivating, it's looking for the food. We have been very deeply and choicelessly, in some ways, in regards to our individual sense of choice, conditioned into this space. So now, even without the particular reward or something like that, there's still this like prompt. There's still this inner prompt that causes us to engage life in this way, coming from lack, coming from fear. So we have to train it again. We have to now say, okay, that was how it was in my unconscious state. And now, and I think this is also very important, I think this is a really core part of personal development, spiritual development, our overall evolution, is to essentially take the power back from the programming. Many people try to bypass this and say, oh no, God or Jesus, I surrender to you, I give everything to you, but you have nothing to give. You literally have already given away all of your life force to these different programs. So now it's really important that you earn these back, not from God, but like from your surrender into these ways of moving in life. And this is where the training begins.
So what would you say is like the number one downside of being impatient? Is it that we give up on things too fast?
Suffering. You see, it's like, it seems like the patience is this idea that like, oh, we can be with suffering. I think that this is a very elementary understanding of patience, because true patience, it has no suffering in it. It is basically similar to you being with a crying baby and you're like, I got you. Like, yeah, there is some suffering, but you are not the suffering, and nor is it your suffering. You are kind of holding it. And so I think the number one drawback of being impatient is that you are suffering, but you are perhaps not even aware of your own suffering. Like you have this space, and instead of like allowing yourself to feel it, heal it, release it, complete that circle, complete the cycle, complete the experience, be free of that samskara, liberate yourself to a greater level of resourcefulness, freedom, love, unconditionality, all of that. Instead, you start to play games. You start to open up, display games, scroll through social media. You are feeling impatient, but you are like, impatience is like this vacuum that pulls in distraction, pulls in either distraction through entertainment or through numbing, through the various forms of addiction, substances, etc. So I think that it is what it is. It's like the biggest thing is that we actually, not only do we not face our suffering and transmute it, we actually just accumulated this wave on unprocessed, very young kind of energy, like demanding toddler kind of energy. And then at a certain point, it's going to hit us when we don't have our drugs, we don't have our numbing creams, we don't have something to be distracted with. Unfortunately, I think for many people, it's at their deathbed. It hits them. Boom. I don't have any more escapes. But you don't have to wait for that like tsunami. We each moment have this ability to really transcend and liberate ourselves simply by being with our experience.
Yeah, it's really like a lack of emotional intelligence. And I agree, it's probably the main drawback is that you are suffering if you are impatient, and you have to know that. But the result of that suffering is typically that you move on to the next thing because you don't want to experience that suffering. So whether it's in a relationship or it's business and you're impatient, you try to move on to the next idea. One of the best methods, I think, to resolve the idea of even needing to be patient or impatient is from an audiobook called The Neuropsychology of Self-Discipline, which I listened to a long time ago. It's actually one of my favorite personal development things that I've ever gone through. And you can just YouTube it. It's free on YouTube. So the neuropsychology of self-discipline. And in there, they said, you should be working towards things that you would want to work on for the rest of your life. And in that way, you need no patience. There is absolutely no patience needed, right? So you have a North Star, you identify that North Star, and you're willing to work towards that for basically eternity. So it doesn't really matter. Like if you died tomorrow, you'd be fine working towards it. There is no end goal. There is no outcome needed to be achieved. There is just a continual working towards it. So I think patience is also a practice of like consistency. So like being patient and just being consistent towards your goals.
What you're saying is really
Perseverance.
powerful.
Sorry.
Perseverance. Yeah, perseverance. But what I heard in what you said is this space of like, there is, I think, a big aspect of our identity and self-image that is probably at the core of this dichotomy, where we're patient, whether we're committed and going to be persistent or not. And that is this, it's like many people, because we start with the assumption that we are lacking something, like whether it's like, you know, we're starting a business and it's because I want to make sure that my degree is not for nothing, you know, or I want to prove to my, you know, family or to my whatever dad who maybe said, you know what, you'll never make it in this. No, I'm going to, you know, and so we start from this lack. And then this idea of reaching a particular place in business, in relationship, and whatever it may be, or even in spirituality, it has this allure that it's going to complete the self. It will complete and release me from that, which I'm sometimes not even aware of. Like it maybe have been the inception of my very drive to accumulate money or to become enlightened or whatever, but it is gone as a conscious recognition. And so I'm driven by this lack and hoping to find my fulfillment and completion in it. And so we are, you know, to exercise what you have said, which is basically like, I remember Dr. DeMartini talking about this as a sense of like legacy. Like, and his legacy idea is not just like the, you know, right after you die, but how is your work impacting life on planet Earth 1,000 years after you have passed away, right? That kind of idea is not accessible to somebody who has this like deeply incomplete and insecure sense of self, who's just trying to like, look at all my plaques, look at all my like, so it's very important, I think, to really even just take a deeper step inwards and to find the okayness and the love for who and what we are. Yeah, it's incomplete compared to maybe our ultimate self, but it is complete at every moment, similar to how a rose starts off as a rosebud, and it seems like, oh, that's a crappy rose, but it is perfect actually, as it's a bud, as it's opening a little bit, as it's opening a little bit more. It is still perfect at each stage, and it's complete in its own way in each stage. But if we compare it to an ultimate outcome, let's say it's incomplete. But again, so this is all a play of the mind, and it's, I think, a mindset that gives foundation for us to even consider patience and perseverance, and this kind of like outlook that is beyond instant gratification is foundational, I believe, to true patience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, two things came to mind there. One is the Taoist. The Taoists used to study nature to determine like ways things would evolve, right, through space and time. And in that sense, there isn't really no patience needed. Things are much like slower when you're observing like a tree, just naturally unfolding itself, right? So that's the same with us. Now, we also have to think of, the second thing was like, we also have to think of what are we being patient for? So we can think of all the different examples, which we'll go through in a bit. So one example is like, being impatient in conversation. It's like, yeah, say what you need to say so that I can speak. It's like, but what is the intention of, like, what is the end feeling of why you're trying to be patient for something, you know? Like, you're being patient in business, for example. What is that end feeling? Because we're always working towards something, which is why we need to be patient. Like, patience, like you said, is change through space and time. So it's like, let's put the intention of like, what is the end goal? We've talked about this many times. It's like, what do you want to feel? Once you step into that feeling, there's no need to be patient. What you like, you're already there.
Yeah, very important what you're saying right now. It's like that is definitely, I believe, a portal, and we can explore different portals to patience. One of it is to realize that I am actually always, no matter what my particular desire is, I am looking for a particular feeling. That is the really core, and perhaps we should do an episode on desire and really decode desire in this way, because desire is this sense like I want this. But then if you knew like this most beatific picture, you got the right house, the car, the boat, the everything, it's all here, but you are bound to be like clinically depressed throughout the whole experience. Like, would you still want it? No, I don't want it. Like, I want actually that joy, that fulfillment, that aliveness. And then actually, well, realize then you don't need any of this, because that joy, fulfillment, aliveness is actually right here, right now. It always was, it always will be, and it's accessible to you. And so, this is one way to actually almost like transcend time, because yeah, as we saw in the beginning, it's like patience always has this idea of a desired outcome as its presupposition, a desired outcome that is not here. But if we really decode this a little bit, we see actually the true desired outcome is a state of feeling, and it is here. How do you know that it's here? Well, you just close your eyes and you say, okay, when's the last time that I felt this way, right? And you just like connect with this face. Oh yeah, wow, I remember. And you see these pictures, you start to feel a little bit of the feelings. Well, what is that? That's evidence that actually the fulfillment of what you really, really want, and the only thing that you will ever experience about any of your desires, which is that feeling, is already here. That can give a strong foundation for us to just like witness and watch, because we already got the end result.
Yeah. There you go, guys. A way to bypass the need to be patient for things. Let's go through some example, like some real world examples, so we can relate to our audience. Of maybe we can just go back and forth and list some ideas of like what you think people are most impatient about. So I will start. One thing is like you mentioned microwave dinners being one of the first things. So nowadays with Uber Eats or even McDonald's, fast food restaurants, people want their food as fast as possible. Again, something that we cannot control, how fast somebody delivers our food.
Right.
What can you think of?
Yeah. And just to see, like, I mean, obviously there's such a strong downside to fulfilling that impatience, right, with fast food. Other things are, I really feel like relationship is a big ground, big training ground for patience, because in a relationship, whether it's like your primary relationship with your partner or with your children, or even your family members, or even your business partners, people who you may not necessarily like at the click of a switch feel like, oh, throw them away. But at the same time, it's like there's this strong temptation to not listen, to feel like you already know it, to assume, but not the best. Assume that, oh yeah, I'm not getting my way, or assume that they are thinking a certain way. So this is an impatience that manifests itself this way, where patience would probably just be like, hey, tell me, you seem to be really upset about this thing. I would love to really hear and understand you. Because if you have patience, which means that you are not squeezing the moment for to try, not squeezing the moment, but like almost ignoring and trying to bypass the moment to get to another time where it's your turn to speak, like you mentioned before, or where it's, that reward or that dopamine, or maybe you're like, hey, I had this experience. I want to go catch the sunset with my partner sharing something. And sometimes I'm like, okay, let's go, or we're going to miss the sunset. Right. And it's just like, I've had those moments where I'm like, okay, wow, geez, like really? Like, this is what's happening right now. And if I want to, and it's also important in those moments to share. It's like, hey, quick pause. Like in my mind, it's going off like, hey, we got to get this to the sunset. I just want to share that, put that down here. And if you want to, we can talk on a drive, or I can just like, now that I said it, it's down. I'm listening to you here. It's like to just take time for that. We actually don't really understand how much more time patience gives us, because we actually waste tremendous amount of time, energy, resource in our fight to get to another time. But if we are just like present with the moment, all of a sudden the right ideas, the right words, like all of it is revealing itself, is conspiring for this moment. And this moment, actually, the only time that we have. This is it. This is exactly the one thing that's happening.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, 100%. I think there's three things that we can gain with more patience. One is we have the ability to choose how we react, I guess, like
Mm.
in the way that benefits not only us but the people around us, rather than being impatient. We also can choose the way we perceive something, whether that's positive or negative. So it's like you're driving on the street and like there's all these red lights. Like you can't fucking control red lights, but you can perceive it in a way that's like, okay, now it gives me calm. Now it allows me to breathe, you know, all
Yeah.
that stuff. And then also it allows us to take time to plan. Like you're saying, we waste so much time being impatient that really planning, like for this example is more so with business, but I'm sure it can apply to like relationships, is like planning is the 80-20 principle, right? Planning is what allows you to move and progress through things, quote unquote, faster, not the impatient anxiety wanting to get somewhere. So
Yeah. There's many quotes like this, right? About like the sharpening the axe is like, if I had, whatever, 5 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend like the first like 4 hours sharpening my axe. It's like, it's this whole idea that when we move from impulse towards this instant gratification that we've been conditioned to, it is like it's really like a setup. It's almost like this reality show setup where you have like this little mousetrap or something like that, and the mousetrap is just there, uh, and you every time you just reach for the thing, it smacks you, but next time you reach for it again and it smacks you. And this is also something I think is important in this conversation we can bring up. This is a classic experiment that was done, and there's so many funny clips and shorts and stuff like online about it. Is like parents teaching their children about patience, right? Where it's like this instant gratification. You put some candy in front of a child and you say, "Okay, I'm going to come back in a minute. Don't eat it." Okay, and the children who do not eat it have this incredible correlation to like being amazingly successful, having more money, having more like positive outcomes in their life than the children who just like grab it and like, and they get the instant gratification, but it's like a virus. It's like a Trojan horse. It's like, yeah, you got it. And then the next moment, it's like you start to feel the emptiness of it. And it's like, oh, and it's almost like you've given up a little part of your soul, a little part of your character, a little part of your power for this little reward. And then even that melts away.
I can see so many people saying, yeah, that makes sense. But like these dopamine hits are, again, ingrained in us at a young age. I think like, yes, we are growing up in a very fast paced generation, but now it's just getting faster and faster. And I know me and you, Boris, we're in our like mid 30s already, but like the younger generation that are in their 20s, it's like, we can't even imagine what goes through their heads because they grew up like literally on TikTok. You know what I mean? So, and these dopamine hits feel good, right? Like if we're to think like we're in a game, we're in a simulation, I can just see people being like, what more is there to life than getting these instant hits of gratification to like enjoy the game that we're playing? So what would you say to somebody who's growing up, I guess, in this fast-paced world and it's only getting faster? Like what is the best way to train patience?
Yeah.
Or how can parents teach their kids to be more patient? Is it like taking away their phones and stuff like that? Because I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, it is happening in many conscious communities. There's this conversation about having, the iPad kids, where basically, the parents just give the kid their iPad or their phone, and the kid shuts up, and there's a reward for the parent in it, but at what cost, right? It's like we also just the first step is always this: it's awareness, right? If you really just begin to bring more awareness to those moments where it's like you take an impulsive action towards dopamine, you will see that yes, there is like a hit, like a coffee like hit, but there isn't joy, peace, love. It is like, yeah. And then guess what happens? Like I've watched myself so many times. Something good happens, boom, my mind goes off. Oh yeah, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Oh yeah, and then it will go like this, and I'm fucking gone, in a completely dissociated space from the moment. And it seems like there is joy, but I really want to challenge you to pay attention. Is that joy, or are you in this like frantic space that's burning out your energy? Like I know that, imagine that I actually have had these experiences with phones. Holy crap. Like some of the games on here, like I just had to delete the games, right? But like all of a sudden it's like, oh, I didn't win. Oh, I want to win. I'm going to finish on a win. And I keep going in and keep going in and keep going in. And you know how it feels at the end? It feels like you were raped. It
Yeah.
feels almost like you were just like pillaged and you're depleted. You have nothing to show for it in the end. And it's just this like, it's like a loss. It's like it's inside, there's a loss, and then you go to bed and you're like, okay, well, tomorrow will be different. But tomorrow you're back on the same addictive wagon. And again, it promises you this fulfillment. And so I think this is the space, is like the only place that we can actually break this chain is the place where awareness is illuminating what is actually unfolding here, to illuminate choice. Because without choice, without the awareness that, oh my God, I'm just like depleting myself over and over again, you just don't have the motivation to practice something, right?
I love that you use that example. And the word that you used was rape, which is literally how you feel. You're literally suffering as much as you think you're enjoying that example of the game. Like you're feeling joy. It's like you're being impatient throughout it all. So thus you're suffering, and it's sapping your willpower or your mana throughout the day.
Yeah. And there's also really another important aspect is like it is like the rewards are empty, right? Like it's really important to notice, like, what do you have in the end? Because like what you have in the end of practicing delayed gratification, for example, is you have a little bit more self-respect. You have a little bit more confidence in yourself. You have a little bit more developed character, and you have this sense of like, yeah, I have the ability to choose. But dopamine hits and this idea of impatience that drives you, it is actually stripping you of something very important. And we might call that control. Your ability to control, your ability to choose is being actually and actively stripped away from you by conditioning. And so in the end, if you follow that path all the way, all you really have is somebody who is literally robot-like, where there's a stimulus, they don't even have a gap to respond. You know, something comes up that they don't like, boom, reaction, boom, all kinds of chaos. And I need to numb myself again with something else. Or something I like, intense craving, I can't control myself, I have to go for it right now, you know? And oh my God, like who wants this life? Who in like the consciousness and realization of this could possibly choose to give up my free will to a computer program, to literally something that is like got none of my best interests in mind, will literally drain me of my life force and throw me away? That's all that's going to happen.
Yeah. I think so many people can relate to that. Two examples came up. It's like nowadays people are reading less and less books because it takes patience to read an entire book. But those of you out there that have read books in the past, you know how fulfilling and rewarding it is to take time to sit down and, you know, just read a book. And at the end of it, you feel complete, you feel whole, you feel like you had some choice in your intention to do something, as opposed to just getting like quick hits of like TikTok or whatever that fill your mind with information. Maybe you think you're even learning, maybe you go on YouTube, but it's just not the same as reading something that's been, you know, taken the patience to go through. Or another example is like masturbation is a huge one for people. Watching porn, it's like that instant gratification of like, oh yeah, let's just masturbate and then like it'll be great, I'll get this dopamine hit and I'll feel good. Nobody feels good after they masturbate typically. That's why there's all these like videos out there of people like stopping or wanting you to get off your addictive habits of masturbation. So yeah, yes. I think a lot of people can relate with that.
Yeah.
These dopamine hits are not for us.
Yeah. And it's like, I also want to contrast this to, for example, when we went camping, right? So sometimes we would go away, when we go away for a few days, and it's like, there's no internet, there's no technology, there's no like TikTok, there's, you know, here we are. And in that space, there actually emerges something. And that emergent quality is almost like a slow release dopamine pill, so to speak. It's like you start to find your own wherewithal, you start to find a sense of belonging, you're like more aware, and it feels good. And it feels good in such a way that you don't miss like, oh, I need to do something on top of it. But when we are in also familiar environments, and this is why I think it's so beautiful to go away, to be in a different space. When we're in familiar environments, all of those familiar habits, they all come into play. Like we see our phone, oh, there's internet, you know, and it's it feeds into our addiction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to go away. Let's go back to things that people cannot escape from, like children or relationships or going to
Yes.
work and their job. Maybe we can spit some more ideas on this before we end the session. So
Yes.
things that are out of your control, basically.
Yeah. So this is probably the most potent and powerful practice ground. Patience, really, I want to almost like redefine it on the other side. Let's give it a little bit of a mystical also definition, because patience is this realization that all is well. It is like, in its ultimate sense, patience is not waiting at all. There's nothing to do with waiting. Patience in the mystical sense is enlightenment. It is this sense of infinite patience. And so one of my most favorite quotes that's really like probably the only quote that really sticks with me all throughout is a quote from A Course in Miracles. And it goes very basic. It just says this. It's like, infinite patience yields instant results. Only infinite patience brings instant results. And this is very, very like paradoxical space, right? What does that mean? How does that even make sense? Why would infinite patience bring instant results? Then you don't need patience. But exactly. You don't need patience. When you have such patience where it doesn't matter to you if something takes 1 hour, 1 day, 1 eon, doesn't matter to you when you watch your partner and you're like, oh, she's doing that thing. Oh, he's doing that thing that I don't like. And we have this sense of like, demand right now that you be different so that I feel something else. And there's a process between that. But like, instead to open up and say, okay, what about 5 years? How about I check in on this in 5 years? If this problem is still here, okay, in 5 years, I'm really going to like, put my demand down. But it's like, but you just like allow, and I like to go much further than that. Like I like to envision my partner or maybe my child, like that spaces that we can't escape from. It's like, what if they were given like 100 lifetimes of evolution? Like they really get to evolve in all possible ways. And then I realized that what they would be is this angelic, beatific, being of like light, love, everything. I'm like, okay, that's actually what they are in truth. And this is weather passing through. This is just weather. This is today there's this storm. Oh, tomorrow it's sprinkling. And when it's sprinkling and storming, you don't go out there and you say, oh, you stop it right now because I want my son. It doesn't make sense. But we think that people are different than weather. This is very confusing. People are not different than weather. People are exactly like weather, like animals, like all natural. They are the Tao. So, even though they speak in concepts, it's like we really have to allow their concepts to just be poetry, to just be like nature, like bird sounds, like wave sounds, and we just watch it. Why do we need something from someone else? This is the other like distortion in our sense of self that is also crafted by this world and media and stories and etc. But you don't actually need that person to change. You don't need that noise to stop. You like, unless you are in physical danger, that your biology is being threatened, your life is being threatened, well, then it's only really like your preferences and expectations are being threatened and broken. Well, if you really realize what they are as thoughts, and you say, okay, that's an interesting thought, but I'm not going to sit here and suffer because I had this thought. So it's really important, I think, to consider that when you give this grace to any experience, this has been my experience, and that's why patience is such a beatific concept and practice that I really love, is because if you come to the place of even just a little bit leaning in the direction of infinite patience, it's like the other person feels it immediately. The situation feels it because you no longer have a demand. You know what it's like, right, Mike? It's like if somebody has a demand on you, it's like, oh, you need to be this way. Even if you really want to like be that way and like you're like, yeah, that's good. But under this demand, it feels like we just feel this resistance. We feel like something's not. And so infinite patience allows us to open, to really witness the person, the experience as it is, yata buddha, right? As it is, not as we want it to be. And we realize as we witness things as they are, they're perfect. They're perfect. They're perfect expressions of what they are. And we realize that we don't need anything from them. And in that space, that alchemical, magical space, that's why it says it yields instant results, because infinite patience is actually just unconditional love. And in that space of unconditional love, everything flourishes. All good things, they are fortified, they flourish, they expand, they multiply. And anything that doesn't serve, it falls away and disappears, because you realize, oh my God, I don't need that hand on the stove anymore. I don't want to keep getting burned. So I would say that this space of, infinite patience, it is the doorway into love, enlightenment, total forgiveness, total understanding of both yourself and everyone else. And it's not a passive state. It is a state in which, like, you are moved by the Tao. You are part of this entire thing, and it feels perfect. It feels fulfilling. It feels enlivening. So those moments where we are challenged are the very moments of practice. They're literally the moment where you have a choice. You either say, this is an opportunity for me to claim my enlightenment and unconditional love, or you just go ahead with the flow of your conditioning. You have another fight, you have another demand, you yell at the person, you damn yourself, you numb yourself, and you continue the cycle.
Yeah, I love that. I love that quote too. But Boris, I don't have infinite patience, and my need for change really is the core need for all change is the fear of lack of time. It's like the shortness of life. If you guys want to watch our previous episode on death, I think we cover a lot of this too. It's like most needs for change or wants or prayers or whatever it is, or impatience comes from the inner desire or the inner feeling of that death is looming and you have a short time here. So thus you must change. You must change right now, not 5 years from now. You know what I mean? Or I will leave this relationship. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. I think that there is room for that. Like there is room for your choice, but it's just like, is your choice stemming from like love? Like for me, it's very obvious. Like, I don't know what compass you'd like to use, but if I'm ever in doubt, I use the love compass. I'm like, is this loving? Like, am I making this choice? Am I moving in a direction that's loving? Because I know love gives me peace, fulfillment, like everything. And we're talking really about, again, like to that person that you are like sharing with us and embodying is a really powerful question, very important question. But it comes back to our earlier conversations. It's like, please pay attention to yourself and know yourself. What do you really want? You are wanting to feel a certain way, and you're using the other person, to basically block yourself from it. But I want to even empower you further. I want to say to you, you actually want to suffer. You want to feel anger. You want to feel this disappointment. That's why you're feeling it. Because if you didn't want to, you would just say, okay, you do your own thing, and I'm going to really connect with my joy, with my sense of self. And I want to take this one more step further. It's just that, like, how do we actually learn patience? If we're going to say, like, what is a technique, not just in the moment where it's really tough and you are challenged by your triggers and different things, but I would say that one of the most like simple, direct paths to patience is actually what is embodied by the practice of Vipassana, right? Vipassana meditation, you're just like, you have an uncomfortable sensation and you are aware of it, period. There's no more beyond this. But in that period that you are aware of it, it is literally revealing to you that it is impermanent. Everything that you witness that you don't like, hasn't it disappeared already? Haven't you had like a million things in your past that haven't worked out the way that you wanted to? And where the hell are they now? They're all gone. So patience, the patience reveals to us that even though appearances say a certain way, we were also taught, like, judge not by appearances. But if we are witnessing with patience, patience itself will reveal the scripture to us and will say, wow, look, it's gone. It's not a problem anymore. So just to practice, like, I would invite us to like sit, maybe just close our eyes. If you have like 5 minutes, try it over 5 minutes. And it's a meditation not to get anywhere at all, but just to be aware of what is. And if you want a good anchor for it, what is happening in your body? What are you feeling right now? And you may even prompt that and say, you know what? Is there anything unresolved in me? Are there any emotions that I don't want to feel? And then close your eyes for 5 minutes and let that be there. And you don't move and you don't make up another story. You are literally just face to face touching the texture of the uncomfortable sensation. And what it will do is it will open up for you that gap in other moments where you will have choice, where you have this opportunity to say, oh, not yet, not right now. I'm not going to fall for this trick one more time.
Beautiful. Yeah, that goes back to my original definition, which is patience is your ability to consciously and skillfully handle the passing of time. So yeah, we have to go back to this. It's like the practice of meditation is not the process of doing nothing. You are doing something, you are sitting, and you're consciously and skillfully handling the passing of time. And so that's a great way to
so we're literally reprogramming our conditioning, right? Like if the conditioning always tells you do something, so that you will get a feeling, do something to get a feeling, do something to avoid a feeling. When you hear this, red flag, this is the matrix speaking to you. This is the conditioning speaking to you. And you literally in that moment do nothing. And it itches inside and it just freaking wants to go, but you don't. And you say for 5 minutes, I will not. Wow, you will open up a completely different arena in consciousness that is not available through TikTok. It's not available through any kind of addiction. It's not available anywhere except from within your own being. And that is there in such abundance that as we start to drink from that well, we start to realize I can be patient for anything. Nothing needs to change and everything can go to hell in a handbasket. I know the truth. The truth is love. Reality is based on love. Even if it looks like complete terror for a second, let's see how long it will last.
Beautiful. I hope you guys are really enjoyed this episode. I feel like this is not an easy thing. We're all addicted. We all have addictions in our life. If we live in the city, if we live in the world, and we're not recluses away in the mountain, this is something that we have to practice. We're not. I don't know if we're born with patience, but I think it's something we have to condition ourselves out of the impatience. So, any last words, Boris?
Yeah, just to know, like, I really want to encourage you to know that patience is a portal to fulfillment of everything that you want. You know, if we could reposition this entire conversation and talk about how to fulfill your desire, and this would be the very foundational conversation, because it's like when you find the reason for patience is inside of you. And the reason for patience is not so that you will get something, but it's that you already have it. And that way, we're actually literally coming from having. We're no longer following this dictum of the world where it's like, oh, the reason to have a business is because you don't have enough money. It's to prove someone else wrong. The reason to get in a relationship is because you can't do it alone. You're feeling lonely. All of this doing to get a feeling can be completely wiped out. And this motivation will no longer drive you in any way. And wow, there is a literally different way to be here in the world when this is not your primary objective and you're coming from fullness. You're coming and you're painting the picture of your life like a painter paints. And the painter paints not because there was a lack on the canvas. The painter paints from the fullness of her heart, and she's expressing herself. And you too will be simply expressing yourself on the canvas of life from this fullness, not to get something, not to get rid of something, but to sing your song and to find all of the fulfillment in just what is.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your wisdom, Boris. And make sure you guys leave a comment below. Let us know, which areas of life are you patient in, and which areas of life are you impatient in? We'd love to know. And drop us a like, and I guess we'll see you guys next time.
And subscribe.
All right. God bless, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.